it's kind of tough to say what we're doing, or what a lot of people will tell you what we're doing is a pretty traditional pastime of Canadian artists, and that's getting out there and painting the landscape and doing these things, doing this stuff that the Group of Seven did, that dozens and dozens or hundreds of artists have done since. So it's a pretty integral part of the Canadian sort of mosaic or whatever, but it's not really something that would be considered avant-garde or something that would be considered contemporary. And as far as fitting into the art scene, most galleries these days, most of the upper echelon galleries, they don't really want a landscape painter, but it's what we love doing and where we love being, and it really sort of marries two of the things that most of us love, and that's being outdoors and painting. If those galleries don't want to be with you or don't want to touch you, then that's one of the reasons why we've always sort of done it on our own and rented our own space and put these shows on, because there's a public response to it, and Canadians love landscape painting.
There's no spoken word that we are doing this for this reason. Everybody's got their own reason for doing it. Everybody is taking their own personal aim. Everybody's got their own distinct style. I think we have all just got a common interest, and that's to go out and paint and study the landscape.
You know, you can't help but be influenced by place, by where you are. And this year we were in Newfoundland, you know, surrounded by people, whereas last year, you know, the trip was very removed from people. It was very isolated, and so there's an influence on that front.
Going out to Newfoundland was incredible because everyone has their preconceptions of areas before they go there, and we always do. We try not to before we go away to a new area especially, but it affects my work. I think it affects everybody's work in a sense that it's one more place that we've discovered within this country, and that's radically different from anywhere else.
When I look back now, it's not only a reflection of Newfoundland, it's a reflection of being on a bus trip. It was, you know, a hectic trip and stuff, although a great trip, but that's what the paintings say. They don't just say Newfoundland, they say bus trip with 10 people as well.
Everyone sort of eagerly anticipated the arrival to Trout River because it was definitely going to be our first impression of Newfoundland, and our first impression of a small town, and our first impression of the people, and everyone was dying to start painting and drawing because we'd been on the bus for about a week. Trout River didn't let us down at all. As soon as we rolled through there, they wanted to know who we were and what we were doing in a really friendly way. Kids everywhere. Everyone sort of got the juices going there because everyone sort of did their first couple pieces there. It was good. It was a great place to start.
I didn't realize how big Newfoundland was, that's for sure. But it was nice that day in Trout River because we just felt the most settled. We've been on this bus right across the eastern part of Canada to get there, and it was our first day where we had the opportunity just to paint and to take it in. Looked 3 different ways and it was different geographically. Yeah. Everywhere you looked, Elephant Head, just like, whoa, when you first came there. It just showed you the awesomeness of the land.
The mountains were all covered in clouds, low cloud cover, so you couldn't really see the tops of the hills in the distance, and every now and then it would break and you'd get a glimpse of how big these hills were, and I was just blown away. I didn't realize that Newfoundland was covered by these massive mountains all over the place.
lasting impressions on me about Trout River was definitely the architecture and the way the town was set up, and the collection of houses, and it was all set up around a neat little harbor, and it's almost like they've built themselves into a horseshoe going out into the ocean, and it was definitely a fishing village. Old, small little shacks everywhere, all clustered together, no sort of, didn't seem to be any rhyme or reason of why they placed certain things here or there, and the actual individual people's houses were incredible, just beautifully taken care of, and out there painting every Sunday, it seemed like, and the trim and the gardens, and the people were proud of their homes, as small and modest as they were, so they were a joy to paint and draw, because they were in great condition, tons of character.
Shallow Bay. Yeah, I've been there. Went there in the morning. Well, woke up there and then headed out to the beach, which was fairly large. Followed Gord's footsteps for a while because he was the first man out. And let's see, kind of checked out the dunes for a while. Actually, put my stuff up on top of a dune. And it was like, okay, I'm going to paint here, but I'm going to go check out the beach first. And then was on the beach for so long that I figured I had to go get my stuff, go back to the beach. I'm just doing tests over here, you see. We'll do practice tests in the sand. See what happens next.
The first trip to Algoma in the winter for me was just incredibly frustrating. I mean, because the other guys had been landscape painting for, a couple of years to a year prior to my entering the group. And I must admit to being a little lost when I first went out. I came back with these panels that were like, I felt like I was in grade 9 art class and hanging out with the art college graduates. I was like, oh man.
I think the importance of sketching in the bush is to grab feeling, the immediacy of it. It's important to take these ideas and these little sketches back to the studio and use them to transport yourself back to this very place. In a month or 2 months' time, I'll go back to my studio and look at this little panel, this scratchy little panel, and transport myself very clearly back to that moment in time. And then I think that in turn helps to produce a stronger piece.
I think that painting is what happens. It's what's left over when a bunch of things happen. It's not a description of what things look like or even what it feels like. It combines what it feels like with I don't know. It's like it's more alchemy than description.
Landscape painting essentially, really isn't any different than any other painting. It's like being in another place, another time, and you're just painting something else. You still have to use the same rules, drawing, get it all down, and try and be organized and not be overwhelmed by what's around you. That was my big problem. It was just like I'd want to catch everything right at once, so I'd start throwing in my brightest colors right away, and by the end I'd just have a big mess, and there was no organization to it.
And initially I was going to just concentrate on one of these pretty amazing pieces of driftwood. But then I realized, this is the only place we're going to be here for a short time. So I might as well try and encapsulate as much of everything, all the elements, water, sky, land. So I sort of walked up and down the beach for about an hour and looked at things, and picked up rocks and smelt the air. And came on this ridge and settled on this location. The hike itself is about 3 hours long. We hiked, the initial part of the hike coming out of the parking lot was rocky cliffs and rocky trails, and it eventually opened up to a coniferous valley that came to Green Gardens, which was this awesome coastline. When we first got there, we threw our packs down, a little tired from the hike, and just took in this tremendous view. An incredible, beautiful place. It felt like Scotland somewhat to me, I guess.
The more painting you do outdoors, the better you understand light, perspective. It's definitely a good exercise for painting. Helps improve the skills.
What do you think you'd be doing if you weren't doing this? If you weren't painting?
Spent some time in the labor union.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I know I can work a jackhammer, but I prefer to be painting. I spent some time in the labor industry to find out that it wasn't where I really wanted to be, but it was a way to pay for school and make ends meet at the time. I don't think there's much else I could be doing.
These sheer cliffs right along the coastline, running up and down both ways like that. Stunning. And this particular painting is about that late afternoon, having arrived from the hike and just being really awestruck by the view, absorbing it.
Alonzo Meadows. Well, we drove from Grossmorn, I guess, straight up to Alonzo Meadows, which is the most northern town in Newfoundland. We arrived at night and stayed outside of this massive tourist site, which I guess is the Viking site, the last vestige of the Vikings, where they landed. And we checked out the Viking settlement and discovered that it really wasn't exactly what we thought or why we really wanted to be there. So we went into town and we ended up parking our bus on this little strip of land, which to me seemed like it probably was the very northernmost part of the island. From there, we sort of made our way into town, and one of the first people we met was this guy, Joby, who was, I don't know, someone will know how old Joby is, I'm not exactly sure anymore, but he claimed to be the last living Viking.
Joby Anderson.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, that's my birds there. Look, you don't eat all their food. No, I don't starve them very much, do I? Look, that's my flesh all the time. When it gets wet, you won't eat it. See? That's food gone. No good for nothing. I gotta go down and see what happened, Mike.
They just jumped in the water and then they grabbed him and then they left.
Oh, I see. Too bad I wouldn't know him. He was in their dog car back wherever the hell he was.
What's that?
Too bad I wouldn't know him. I heard someone screeched out from way in there.
Yeah, I mean.
I didn't know what was wrong. If I was home, brother, he would in their dog car. He would in their dog car back.
Oh,
I just took my gun and just sat down and started you and chatting. No fooling around.
The last known Viking.
Last known Viking, boy. My goals to be all gone. Ain't not one left.
Your son's not going to carry on the tradition?
No, I don't expect. Everything is altered. Everything is changed, you know. Yeah. Not like it used to be. No more old days like they had. No, everything has changed. Yeah. Hello, Cat.
He's Rusty, the old goat.
They don't know they're messing with the oldest Viking in the cove.
That's right, sir. That's right.
I think it's important to have people to rely on, you know, if you're creating things, because it's such a demanding process. You start getting tired of looking at one of your paintings, or you're frustrated with the way you're handling things, and then you go and visit one of the other guys, and you see what they're doing, and they might have some advice to offer you. So it's important to have people whose opinions you trust and respect and to turn to.
I don't think anybody could really go out in Canada and do landscape painting in any sort of impressionist sense and not have it be compared to the group of seven. If you ever think, well, let's see, you know, Tom Thompson did something like this, I think I'll try and do that. I mean, if you take a look at all the artists' work, you know, at the end of the day, every panel is so different, and everyone's got their own really, really distinctive style. And you can just tell that, you know, we're all going after our own thing. At the same time, I mean, we're just a bunch of young painters doing what we love to do, and we're not doing it because anyone else did it before us. We're doing it because we want to do it.
I only really like very few of the Group of Seven's paintings. For my personal interest in painting, I like Tom Thompson's small paintings from the bush. Just the energy of the bush comes out. You can see the energy of the bush. And I mean, that's what made that group paint, is Tom Thompson's bush paintings. I just admire good paintings. I don't know if I admire good painters, because I think every painter has bad paintings and good paintings.
The trek into Western Brook Pond was the longest hike I think that we went on, 7.5 clicks or so. You know, and when we first arrived, it was beautiful. It was sunny, it was nice, but then we got some rain, and you know, you just see the clouds rolling in and covering the tops of the mountains, and the sunset, and the orange light blasting through the clouds was just unbelievable. It was a really spectacular place.
Aye. My little sculpture garden got destroyed overnight. Very few remains. There's got a fascination with sticks and stones. Yeah. Different, like all the composites of what makes up the landscape. So I'm focusing on how they relate together and how you can sort of intermingle the different elements and what you can create. I've been collecting driftwood all over this land. And I ain't never seen me a piece like this. They're also different because, like, I mean, the way I generally, that's its normal shape, and this is what it's doing underground, right? So I like to focus on for some pieces, what happens underground. So you flip it upside down, and now this becomes a pedestal for this. So the way I see it, all the trees should be flipped over, and all the roots should be in the air. Someday I'll have a forest, it's just roots.
A lot of your sculptures you leave, though. No one will ever see them. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's tough to leave them, but sometimes you can't do it otherwise. Otherwise you wouldn't do it. You have to break that attachment. It's like doing a painting and selling it. There's no difference whether it makes me happier to leave it in a place where, you know, it may only last a couple days, a week, a month, a year, but it has that, you know, it's in its place, and you learn a lot from doing it. You know, not every piece has to be something you take home, something you show.
This is covered in dirt. And this was on a particularly frustrating day. The bush had beaten me up pretty bad. I was out looking for a place to paint. Finally found the spot I wanted to get to, and the mosquitoes were unreal. And but there were blueberries everywhere. So I ate blueberries and avoided painting and killed mosquitoes. Lost my camera in the woods. Finally made it back. Tore the crap out of my clothes and sat down and did this panel on the beach. And and then fell asleep, I think.
Salvage, a town that we hit our second last stop, I think before we got to St. John's. And it was one of those classical fishing villages. And it was, I guess, the second oldest fishing village in Newfoundland. They only had a road put in there in 1965. So it was basically a fishing outport, only accessible by boat up until that time. One of the great things about Salvage was the surrounding landscape, and to be able to get advantage of the town from a peak. We came and parked our bus in the town, as was somewhat a ritual, and it seemed like always the circus coming to town, all the kids would peek out of their little hiding spots and, you know, make their way slowly up to the bus and sort of scout out what was going on. I remember particularly one instance, I was doing some work about behind the bus and playing with some rocks, just playing on some ideas. I've been noticing how the shores form with the little jetties here and there, and just by assembling it, I was able to describe to them what I was trying to get out of it, being an outsider, playing with the elements of their environment. So it was a good feeling to be able to sort of pass on a little message of what you were trying to achieve on the trip to a child whose mind is always open to new concepts and new ideas.
It really was at that point that we knew that we were more interacting with the Newfoundlanders, which is a different part of this trip for us, because most of the time when we're on the trips, it's just about being in the bush and kind of separating ourselves from any other elements of society. But here we were really delving into another culture and really enjoying it.
So you'll be fishing for squid to the end of October, you say? And where's all the squid go?
Well, these here now, we're drawing. Put them out to store and hangs them up. And when they're dried, then pressed out and strips into the fish pond.
25 pounds. Very good.
Remember what it's like to have the painting go the way I want it to, because this trip has just been so fucking like social or so busy or something. You don't get the solace that makes the good paintings. No, it's nice having enough quiet so that you don't even leave your painting when you go to bed. You wake up in the morning and you're in the same place you were the day before in your head. Just go out there and do it again.
Getting to St. Leonard's was a bit of an adventure in itself. Bad weather kept us across Placentia Bay in the town of Placentia for a day and a half, 2 days. Our boat that we had rented to ferry us across to St. Leonard's from Placentia wasn't going to travel in the rough weather. So after 2 days of waiting around for the weather to change, we hopped in the bus and 6 of us drove up to Arnold's Cove, where we rented a boat that took us over, a 3-hour boat cruise over to our sheltered bay, and they dropped us off and left us there for 5 days. St. Leonard's was the place in Newfoundland that I got to know best.
It reminds me a lot of painting in Skungwai, out in the Queen Charlotte's last year. We were at this totem site that had been uninhabited for hundreds of years. But these totems are about 400 years old. It was such a spiritual place. And there's a similar sense here. The abandoned buildings, you get a sense that at one point in time there was a lot of activity here, you know?
I just like getting back into the thick of it all, into the bush, trying to live a simpler lifestyle. It's an indication of a different way of life. I mean, the fact that the people have left here or were relocated in this case, but up in northern Ontario, the conditions are so harsh that, you know, there's ghost communities where you know that once there was a thriving lifestyle there, and yet the conditions are so harsh. You can tell that these people had heart, that they were survivors. This was home. I can't draw a comparison to anywhere I've been in Canada. It's definitely a challenge painting out here with the change of elements, the weather moving, changing on you quickly, being forced inside for little rain delays.
If it's a good painting, like if the painting, if it's one that I think was good, like because the day that I painted it, it felt good. Because I mean, that's what makes a good painting, is when you're painting it, it blows your mind. I don't think it has anything to do with what it looks like. It has to do with the energy that you put down. It's like when a baseball team is playing a brilliant game. Like, it's not because they're good players and they're doing everything right. It's something else that makes it work. And I think that's what a good painting is. It's not that you're a skilled painter, it's that it's going well. You mean what you're saying and it does something. Actually, there's nothing like a baseball team at all. I don't think there's no way someone would look at this painting and say, oh, it's the Church of St. Kieran's.
fascinated by things Canadian. Grew up with the myth that there was no Canadian culture, and I've been traveling coast to coast to see what Canada is to me. And I'm constantly amazed at how vast it is and the different cultures within our country. And the more I learn, the more I love it.
When all is said and done, the painting is what sits around in the end. You know, that's what people look at. The painting can be around for a long time to influence people, whereas the artist will be long gone or you know, on to other things. Funny, as you get further and further away from the actual time of the trip, it becomes a little more, it becomes more difficult to get your head into that Newfoundland space. But I find that, you know, if I'm regularly looking at photographs and going through the sketches again. And
Good to be back. Very good to be back.
It's good to be in the studio working on trying to finally realize
Some of the work from the trip.
Since we got back from the trip, I've been the rambling man of the group. I've been spending my time between painting in Cannington and painting up here in Collingwood. It's a little crazy, but somehow it seems to be working.
I paint a lot of paintings, and like maybe 10% of them are top notch, and you can't show anything other than your very best because there's no point.
Well, we have a lot of clients here tonight, a lot of supporters of young Canadian artists.
We don't understand the big attraction. I think maybe it does come back to honesty, that the work is, there's a truth in it that people seem to connect with. And I think that's great.
I think even if you sell 2 paintings a year, you're still going to keep going. I think you're going to keep going even if they don't, because you paint out of reaction to that.
I don't think any of us thought at this point in our career, before we were 30, we'd be able to even have an income from painting, but we've been lucky and we've got a supportive group, especially in Ontario, that's enabled us to sort of continue doing what we want to do. And yeah, we do make a living at it.
There's the shallow bay painting. See there, you can see the beach and the cold weather. You can see the cold weather in that. And I think my toque is in here somewhere. I'm not sure where actually. Actually, right now I can't see anything because I'm a little behind the picture.